Julie Mott, 25, died August 8, 2015, of a long illness. Relatives of the deceased held a farewell ceremony on August 15. On that day, the girl would have turned 26. Julie's father negotiated a burial contract, paying nearly $7,500 for a memorial embalming service and cremation of the body. On the appointed day, the girl's body was taken to Mission Park North Funeral Home. The farewell ceremony began at noon and ended about 1:30 p.m. After which the casket with the body was moved to the corridor awaiting transfer to the crematory. Cremation was to take place the next day at the Mission Park South branch on the other side of town. At 4:30 p.m., the staff closed the chapel and went home. The next morning, they were surprised to find the girl's body missing from the casket, one of its hinges damaged. The stretcher on which the coffin had been placed was in an unnatural position by the front door. It is believed that the body disappeared in the 3-hour period between the end of the memorial service and the closing of the institution. Police initiated an investigation into the theft of labor. The first thing law enforcers did was to interview bureau employees who found the casket empty. They said there were no signs of forced entry into the building and the security alarm was not triggered. Unfortunately, there were no surveillance cameras in the funeral home. They were installed later. While the police were trying to piece together a picture of what had happened, volunteers organized a search for a body that had disappeared under mysterious circumstances. The funeral homeowner offered a reward of $20 million for any information that would lead to the discovery of the body or the arrest of the person who had committed the atrocity. Soon, the damaged hinge of the coffin lid caught the attention of the police. This showed that it had been opened by someone who probably did not know how to do it properly. Almost immediately, suspicion fell on Julie's ex-boyfriend, Bill Wilburn, who was described as obsessed with his lover. They had been dating for 6 years, but broke up 2 years before the girl's death. The girl's parents stated that Wilburn stalked her in the last weeks of her life. He constantly wrote her messages and called her while she was in the hospital. Later they found out interesting details. Wilburn attended the funeral and was reported by witnesses to have lingered at the casket for about 10 to 15 minutes after everyone had dispersed. While this is suspicious, it seems unlikely that he could have carried the body out alone in broad daylight with no one noticing. Here's what Wilburn himself had to say about it. "I was really the last one to leave, but there were 3 or 4 other employees left. One of them was the woman who closed the door behind me as I was leaving. They say the casket was broken into or not opened properly, which doesn't really mean a damn thing to me because it was a service casket for people who needed to be cremated." Speaking of which, Julie herself requested that she be cremated and her ashes scattered. Wilburn, however, was against her cremation. Besides the ex-boyfriend, another suspect was named funeral homeowner Dick Tips. It was found that the bureau had hired a subcontractor, Bayer Beidel, to provide some services associated with the funeral, including transporting the bodies. Bayer Beidel did not have the best reputation. Just months before Julie's body disappeared, they were sued by another family after they mixed up the bodies of 2 women. Despite this serious oversight, Bayer Beidel employees had unrestricted access to the funeral home, including off-duty hours, as well as keys to the doors and codes to disable the alarms. There is a theory that Julie's body was mistakenly confused with another body and cremated prematurely, while the funeral home did everything it could to cover it up. Meanwhile, Julie's ex-boyfriend began stalking anyone connected with the disappearance of her body, to get information on his whereabouts. According to police records, he called the funeral home over 200 times a day. In addition, Wilburn regularly drove there, peering in windows and pulling doorknobs. Eventually police barred him from the funeral home grounds, but he didn't stop there. The Mott family reported Wilburn to the police after he called their phone about a dozen times in the middle of the night for 2 weeks, wanting to know how the investigation was going. 4 months later, Wilburn violated the police ban on trespassing at the funeral home. He was spotted by employees and caught on surveillance camera while attempting to enter the building. The boy was arrested and sentenced to 2 days in jail. While the police tried unsuccessfully to locate the missing body, the Mott family sued the funeral home, accusing its management and employees of negligence. In the end, the grief-stricken parents were awarded $8 million in compensation. This victory was a hollow ringer for the Mott family, which had already lost its daughter twice. It has been 7 years since Julie's body disappeared from her casket, and to this day, its whereabouts remain unknown. Despite what many consider Wilburn's behavior suspicious, no charges have been filed against him. According to Wilburn himself, police searched his home and his parents' home, but found nothing. He himself believes that the employees of the funeral home were directly involved in the body's disappearance. It remains unknown whether the body was stolen by the ex-boyfriend, lost because of the confusion at the funeral home, or whether another fate befell him.